let's go watch it in 2D. No, let's go watch it in 3D. But if we watch it in 3D, then is it worth the cost?
Hello. Welcome to the spoilerific review of Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. I am not alone today. I have Miss Christin Richard.
Hello, everyone.
Now, Christin, you are, I guess, besides James, which are protesting the movie, you're probably the most expert of Star Wars, right?
Yeah, I admit that I've watched the first film at least 175 times in my lifetime.
The first one being, you're referring to Episode 4, New Hope.
That's right.
So you've been a lover of the franchise since the beginning. You know, did you watch them in theaters when you were in little girl? All of them?
Yes, I did. Every one of them.
Wow. Now, I don't remember. I think the last one came out, Return of the Jedi, when I was just barely being born. So I didn't watch it. And then I didn't watch the re-releases, but I did watch the prequels in theater because my friends were super excited about it. And yeah. But that's neither here nor there. I do like Star Wars. I kind of want to have that preface a little bit overall. And I prefer Star Trek because that's, it's a fun movie series. And I really like this movie. Christin, what do you think, just overall?
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty good film.
Okay, so we start things off with, I forget that pilot's name, escaping and trying to...
yeah, that was Poe.
And he has the whereabouts of Luke Skywalker. And he eventually finds a Finn, which is a stormtrooper that is rebelling, and the droid, BB-8, he puts the content there. So those two characters join together, and then it leads to eventually leading back to... What was her name? Not Finn.
Ren. Or Rey.
Yeah.
Rey.
Yeah, Kylo Rey. And she's not really sure what is going on, but she's just kind of there for it. And eventually she finds General Leia, or Han Solo first, and then Han and Chewie rescue them to then eventually meet up with General Leia. I'm getting just kind of jumping around the plot points here. And they eventually figure out that Kylo Ren is, I guess, force sensitive. So she has a connection.
You mean Rey?
Yeah, Rey. And there's a new evil order called the First Round? No. The First Order.
Yes, the First Order.
Who's taken the evil empire, ashes, and has continued on. And the New Republic has, the Resistance trying to fight them. So the movie is basically based on the Resistance trying to fight them. And we eventually find out that Leia and Han have a son who is essentially the main villain of this movie, or one of the main villains.
Kylo Ren.
Mm-hmm. So that's basically the plot. There's also another I don't know what it is or who he is, but a hologram of another supreme villain that's ordering everyone else around.
Yeah, I didn't get his name either, but I guess he was like the new emperor, the new master of the Sith.
And there's a new super weapon that gets the energy from a sun and then is able to shoot out different multiple planets and destroy them. So they'd have to try to stop this weapon, try to find Luke, and get everything settled. Now, what do you think of everything first, overall? Is that basic plot points out of the way?
I thought the movie was fast-paced and well orchestrated. Overall, there were some plot holes that bothered me a little bit. I don't know if those are going to be resolved in the future films, but they
yeah.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I could see that. I kind of think that the plot holes were just, for me, the kind of things that bug me, where it's just so freaking convenient.
Yes, that's what they were. They were plot holes of convenience. That's what I thought as well.
So it's just like, okay, I'll let, some of that is just kind of annoying to me, but it's not too egregious, but it's like getting there.
Well, I hope that they fill them in. The first plot hole that I saw was Vader's mask, and I wondered where on earth that Kylo Ren, Han Solo, and Leia's son got the mask of his grandfather. And, he was cremated on Endor. I mean, it's possible that the mask would have just been burned to the way it was in the film. But just where did he get this, this mask? Did he fly to Endor and pick it up? Did Luke keep it? I wondered where that came from.
Yeah, and it was incredibly convenient that the Millennium Falcon is right there whenever they need it.
Exactly. Yeah, it just happened to be there. They kind of explained that through the dialogue, though, that it was like a theft and then a sale and then another sale, But
yeah.
But just that it happened to be there, and it happened to be running well enough for space flight, despite having sat up in the desert for probably a decade.
Yeah.
Oh, it's still airtight.
Yeah. In fairness, though, the other Star Wars movies had some issues with that, too, but not. It's kind of more obvious now, I think, in this movie.
Perhaps so. Perhaps we're older now than we were when we saw the first ones. But they really stuck out. The other one that really bothered me is, I'm trying to remember what Maz, I think the lady's name was, with the glasses, the lenses with the big eyes,
mm-hmm.
that Han Solo and Chewbacca go to meet. I just wondered how on earth, it was almost like this Luke's lightsaber had sort of become like the Excalibur, and I'm sure they employed some elements purposefully from the Legend of Excalibur. But it calls to Rey with the baby's cry, and then she opens up this box, like in this room, downstairs, and behold, Anakin Skywalker's saber, and that Luke had in the first film. And I just wondered, okay, Luke got his right hand chopped off in Empire Strikes Back. It fell down, thousands and thousands of feet through that chamber, through that large opening, that large shaft that Luke finally fell into. And so, I just wondered, how did Maz end up with the saber? And, Rey asks, and Maz kind of says, well, that's a story for another time, just as the attack begins. So I thought, well, maybe they're gonna sew that up later.
Yeah, maybe. I actually do appreciate that they mention that and say that's a story for another time. They don't just blow it off completely. It is blow off, but it's at least acknowledging it,
Right.
Maybe it's one of those things that in the new expanded universe, the new comic books that are supposed to be coming out and novels, they may explain some of that,
Well, I guess, you know, in my mind, I'm trying to figure it out. I'm like, well, maybe Vader retrieved the saber after Luke's escape. You know, the saber probably meant something to him. And so maybe he retrieved it from Cloud City.
Yeah. Now,
And maybe it was in his personal effects when he died.
It's kind of strange, too, that apparently C-3PO had a red arm, and then it was never explained, and then it's gone. It's like, huh? What's the deal with the red arm? You know?
Yeah.
And then, of course, you know, convenience-wise with R2-D2 being able to come back and then save the day, essentially, with the math data, you know.
Yeah, I was wondering, you know, what caused him to wake up? Did Luke, you know, have a timer on him that when the new Death Star, I'm trying to think of what they call the new Death Star, you know, when it exploded, that it woke him up or something?
Yeah, I kind of got the impression, because they had a flashback and I guess flash forward. It's a vision, and it looked like in that vision Luke was playing with R2 to put him into that deep sleep, and maybe that deep sleep was able to make his processing able to have the data to download it or something, because there was a huge amount of data. And that's what took so long. But that wasn't really explained. It was kind of out there. It's like, oh, okay.
And I did want to mention that C-3PO did have different colored components. I think in The Empire Strikes Back, one of his limbs was silver instead of gold. One of his legs. So it wasn't unusual for them to use other droid parts for repair on C-3PO in the past.
Now, how did you feel about Han being back, first of all, and the relationship he has with Leia, which, you know, was completely assumed after Return of the Jedi? You know, I thought they worked so well together. The chemistry they had 30, 40 years ago was still there, and it worked really well for me.
Yeah, I agree. It was obvious that they had a falling out, you know, because they were, you know, two very headstrong people that always thought that they were right. So there was apparently, you know, a breakup, you know, or a separation, I'll call it, between them, that they were trying to reconcile.
And it was just like a respectful kind of thing where, you know, which it makes complete sense. You can't really see Han being a married man tied down and, you know, and that kind of thing. You can always imagine him always finding some kind of adventure to go to, you know.
And you couldn't really imagine Leia, you know, being pinned down to a household either. You know, she's always, you know, running, you know, the resistance. And so it would, you know, and so it would stand to reason that she would be just as drawn away from the married life as Han would be.
Now, the new characters, Finn and Kylo Ren, I think, yeah. I really like both of them, too. They really show some good chops in acting, and I think both of them fit those roles I think love. And it's refreshing and nice to be able to see an African-American and a woman be a main protagonist. And
okay, I think you keep getting Rey confused with Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren was the Sith.
Okay, Ren, yes.
Rey.
But it's still refreshing to have a lead woman, you know, be the main person, and she's not weak. She's very strong, just like Leia, and you know, and same thing with Finn. You know, it's good. It feels like finally, you know, a new generation Star Wars because it's not the same.
Right, and they kind of followed the same flavor as Lucas had. He seemed to always enjoy putting a brown-haired, brown-eyed girl as a strong feminine role, from Leia to Padme to Rey.
Mm-hmm. And now, you kind of mentioned that, and that's one thing that a lot of people have been criticized, and I can understand it, that it feels familiar to A New Hope a lot. You know, there's a lot of plot points that are similar,
It did, but it did, but I think that in the legacy of Star Wars there were lots of circles, and you hear Vader often refer to, the circle is now complete, or his failure is now complete. It was always a circle, even down to Luke getting his hand chopped off and putting a black glove over it after it gets shot with the laser gun. It's the same, pilot's gloves that Vader is wearing over his mechanical arm as well. And so I think there's a lot of similarities throughout the whole franchise that resurface over and over again.
Yeah, and I know some people really said, "Oh, it's just a remake," and it's like, no, it's not. It's for
it's a lot of different roles,
It's cousin to
Han and Lea's son, falls to the dark side. They didn't poke around with any sort of secrecy of, no, that's our son.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't, say that it, an evil Jedi by the name of Kylo Ren, killed my son Ben. It was, open, knowledge that the new Sith, the apprentice, was Han's son.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't keep that around for like 2 movies or whatever.
Right. Didn't take 3 movies for them to admit that.
Now, people are wondering if Ren is Luke's daughter or something.
You mean Rey?
Yeah, Rey. Yeah, I'm sorry.
It is confusing.
Do you think there's anything to that, or do you think just the heck of it that she just is strong in the Force, and that's why she knows how to use a lightsaber and knows how to use the Jedi mind tricks and everything?
I guess it's possible. But I think it's important also to remember that, the Skywalker family doesn't have any sort of, hold over the Force. There are other Force users. There were other Jedi that had nothing to do with the Skywalker family in the Jedi, that were equally Force sensitive.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the biggest aspect of the story, which I was not expecting, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. Christin, Han Solo's death.
Yes. Did you cry? Did you cry, Adolf? I cried.
I had it was just a shock, because I really did, think that he was turning his son. And, I was hoping he, for the sake of story, I was like, well, I don't know where it was going to go. But I actually had a tear in my going down. I was like, but, I feel like Han died a very honorable death,
Right, with his own son killing him.
Yeah, and he really did try to get back with them in good, graces, and it was really epic how it showed it, and it was a good way to finish off the character. It's sad, but it's satisfying sad,
Yeah, it was almost like a real person died. I was driving home from the theater thinking, well, Han is dead now.
And I love that Leia knew without anyone having to tell her.
Right. Well, Leia was Force sensitive too.
Just
and
like
she didn't use any dialogue. It was just the total star actress that she is. Just the facial expression, just the very slow sorrow that just fell over her.
Yeah, and now because we kind of got the depth a little bit from New Hope whenever she did feel. For the planet exploding, of course that's horrible, but she felt that pain too of that, of all the people dying. So she would know if Han is dead. So it's one of those things that scene was just, it could have been corny or bad. It was perfect. And
yeah, that was possibly the best scene of the movie.
So eventually, the movie does end with Ren meeting up with Luke.
You mean Rey? Rey.
Yeah, and it just stops it right there. So, which is actually.
I thought it was interesting that Mark Hamill didn't have a single word spoken through that whole movie.
Yeah, and because a lot of the build-up before the movie with the press was how, where's Luke? Because they have movie posters with every single character having their own poster, but no Luke. And it's like, well, where's Luke? Where's Luke? He's not on any of the posters, and it's like, well, is Luke turned to the dark side, or is he not going to be in the movie? They got all the actors, and no, they just saved him for the last. And I thought Mark Hamill as Luke, he looks handsome, and he looks fantastic with a beard. He's aged so well.
And I love the mechanical hand. He had foregone the skin covering over the mechanical hand. It was just totally robotic, and it clattered when it moved.
So yeah, I really did that. I actually was like, well, what are you going to say? What can you say? And it's like, you know what? It's better just to leave that for your imagination. That's, kind of thing.
Well, I'm sure he'll have a bigger part in the second film. And as far as Han dying, I thought that was a requisite of him returning, because he's never liked doing Han Solo. He didn't want to do that. He didn't even want to do Empire Strikes Back. And then they pulled him back to do Return of the Jedi, and he was done with it. He was done with it. I don't know why Harrison Ford doesn't find the Han character interesting. But of course, Harrison Ford's off-screen personality is much different than what the public views on film. So I've watched his interviews. He's pretty awkward. Yeah,
and I've heard, I think originally he wanted to die in Return of the Jedi, but they're like, no, you can't do that. No, we're not going to let you,
Right.
So, and
it was supposed to be the last chapter, and it certainly was, for, 25 years, or what was it? Let's see. 16 years between. No, it's more than that. Yes, it was 16 years. 17 years. 83 to 1999. So I'm sure, and of course they had a whole new cast in those films, so I'm sure, that Harrison Ford, just presumed this is it. I don't have to go back to that role, thank God.
Yeah, and I heard that he got a huge paycheck for the movie, parties, to push him to get it, and, but I think...
Yeah, rumors said that he got paid, like, triple of what the new coming actors were paid. So, I guess money talks.
Yeah, and honestly, the new actors, they have their entire career ahead of them. So it's not that big a deal, because they're in Star Wars, and it's going to work out for them. And, I think Finn was a great character. I really liked how he got his name, too. Where, he never had a name. He just gave him one because of his number,
Right.
And I did like that he didn't know what to do, and he was panicky, and, he was scared. He just wanted to run away, and eventually he, found his way. But,
well, as a writer, I see a lot of what they call the hero's journey.
Yeah.
Luke was reluctant. He just wanted to go back to his farm, and he didn't have anywhere else to run, so he had to fight. And I saw that in Rey when she first picked up the lightsaber and saw the vision, and she didn't want anything to do with it, and she ran away until she didn't have anywhere else to run. So it was that way for Finn as well.
Yeah.
It's like you run until your back is against the wall, and then you fight, and you don't stop fighting.
Yeah, and I did
like... That's a very common theme in hero movies. The reluctant hero, it's sort of the journey of the hero.
And I did like that, Finn did try to fight, but he got whooped. And it was really a devastating, beat down. And I was like, that's actually good to see. Not that it's nice to see, main character getting really hurt, but good that he wasn't the hero, that it had to be her,
I wondered whether she would have won the saber fight against Kylo Ren, had Kylo Ren not been injured by Chewbacca after murdering Han. Because it seemed like he was in pain and very preoccupied with his injury, when they started fighting.
Yeah, and of course that makes it so that way he does have a handicap to her. And,
right.
Because she obviously has never used the lightsaber, but is using one, now. So,
and I think it's kind of hinted that the saber itself has a consciousness of its own. The fact that their force draws to try to obtain the Anakin saber between Kylo Ren and Rey. The fact that Rey won out, it was because it was almost hinted that it was the will of the saber to go to Rey instead of to the Sith apprentice.
So, what do you think this? I feel like they did a great fan service to the movie and making it, so familiar. But I think they left it completely wide open to make episode 8 and 9 be totally different. Yeah,
I think that it was very important to J.J. Abrams to make a film that was going to work. And it was interesting when I was at the theater, because in 1999, when I saw The Phantom Menace, there was hooting and hollering right at the drum roll, and the famous Star Wars fanfare. And this time, a couple of people applauded, but they quickly stopped. And it was like everybody was looking around like, wait and see before we start applauding. And then at the end of the film, they applauded. And I thought that was interesting. That was an interesting switch. Because, I think a lot of people enjoyed Phantom Menace when it first came out. It just hasn't held up to the test of time very well. And, people have been dicing that movie, for, since 1999. And it just hasn't held up nearly as well. It's funny how everybody seems to hold that the only reason that movie exists is for the pod race. But the pod race is to me is probably one of the least interesting parts of that movie. The best parts of that movie is the saber fight at the end. That was the thing that drawed me in, and the soundtrack that Williams wrote for that duel, the Duel of the Fates, was possibly one of his best works. And so to me, the Phantom Menace has a place in Star Wars.
Yeah,
but it just hasn't held up, and I just thought it was interesting that the audience held their applause until the end.
Yeah, and I think part of that too was that people were satisfied that it came back for Phantom Menace, but they were satisfied how the movie actually was with Force Awakens.
Exactly.
And I really think a lot of people really don't like the prequels, and I agree. They're not very good movies. I think the third one of the Revenge of the Sith is actually the best of the three, but that's still much lesser than the original series. I would put Force Awakens above all of the prequels, and I would put it up like second. I loved it.
Right. People always ask, what order do you watch these movies? Do you start at the beginning? And I always say, no, you watch them in the order that they were released.
Yeah. And
because it was obvious that was the way that they were tooled. You couldn't watch, the prequels before the original trilogy and still have those shocking emotional moments of the revelation of Luke's father, Ben Kenobi's lie. You wouldn't, Leia being Luke's, secret sister. None of those secrets and emotions would stir if you started from the beginning. So you would just watch them in the order that they were released.
Now, the plot holes, it is something that really does distract it, and it does feel a little too similar. But overall, though, I thought it was really fast-paced, well-acted, well-choreographed, and tons of fun with great action. I adore this movie, and for me, Kristen, I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10.
9 out of 10. Well, I'm not going to be quite that generous. Because I want to wait to see how this stands the test of time, and I want to see how some of these plot holes fill in. So I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we both agreed that it's actually a really, really well done movie, and I want to see it again.
Me too. You're missing out, James Case.
You're missing out, but that's, whatever. And, yeah, do you have anything else to say about the movie?
I do. I was going to say that a lot of people are being critical of this movie for the feminine heroine, the hero, the African-American co-star. It's one thing that people have to realize is that movies have to be made for the time that they are in. And the world has changed a whole lot since 1977. So it's impossible to make a movie like 1977, in 2015. It wouldn't work. It would be so criticized that people would boycott it for the right reasons instead of the wrong reasons. And another interesting thing, my artist friend Ben Dunn took his son and daughter to see it, and they were both captivated. And Ben said he didn't get nearly as excited about it, but he said when he watched his children's eyes watching that movie, that he said they're hyperactive. They almost always talk through films. That they were captivated, and he said he realized that the movie wasn't made for him; it was made for his son and daughter. And I thought that was really interesting because that was possibly the way it was for us back in the 80s, when we were watching those films. Those films were made for us, for the tweens and the teens to go watch. And, they were captivated. And so I thought it was interesting that his tweens were captivated every bit as much.
Yeah, I could see that. And, the serial way of doing movies, because this is, reference, Star Wars as a whole general universe is a reference to really early cinema, the scroll, different episodes, just that old school, fun, popcorn kind of movie that, is not meant to be super taken seriously. It's just a really fun kind of movie. And
right, it's a fun movie that affects you.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed this, and like I said before, it feels, having the female, lead and the African American, co-star, it makes it feel fresh, like not something, and that works so well.
It makes it work for 2015 instead of 1977.
Yeah, and I do feel the villain, I really like that he did struggle with being evil. It wasn't an easy thing of being evil, and to fully transfer over, he had to kill his father. And
right, I thought that too. I think it was almost like if I kill my dad, that will make my transfer to the dark side complete.
Yeah, and I just like the more, it feels more adult filmmaking as well. Certain things like the blood, whenever Finn was first out there and they used the blood on the hand over his mask, I thought that was very effective and much more adult kind of thing that you really do sense he was, being a sanitation worker, he maybe never been on the field, and this is the first time he's in the field. Of course he would not want to be part of this,
Right, and I think younger audiences today are a lot more desensitized to things like that than possibly we were.
Yeah, but it makes it work better as a movie, and I really do feel like Ren would have killed him if there wasn't then an earthquake that separated them. There's nothing stopping her because she had every reason to. She started getting really attached to Han.
I love the symbolism of the rift that was created during the destruction of the new base. I really liked that. It was snowy, it was woods, and this rift formed in between them. Sort of like the rift between their understanding of the Force.
Now, that was a great scene and fantastic special effects, which we haven't talked to about yet. I think the special effects here knock it out of the park. And it looks gorgeous.
They were a really nice blend of practical and computer effects. It wasn't like Lucas that tried to make 3 films basically with nothing but green screens. I wondered a lot of times watching those films again whether the actors suffered from those movies because there weren't enough props for them to fully get into character.
Yeah, and the director J.J. Abrams said that he wanted to make this movie as much in real life as possible, and whatever you couldn't do, we'll add in CG or add CG to make it better. But the main idea was to make everything real, and when I saw that BB-8 is actual real robots, it really does help. And I think
it does indeed. And I think that Lucas failed in the prequels because he just went a little bit too far with the computer special effects, and his story really suffered. It's almost like he thought, I don't need a story, I've got these great effects.
Yeah,
and it worked out for him. The man's a billionaire. Everybody went to see the movies, so it was a success. But it wasn't a timely success, because once the smoke screen started to clear, people started, scratching their heads. And
yeah.
So, but J.J. Abrams is a great director, and he shot it on 70 millimeter, film. He didn't use, digital recording for the most part, and I think that added sort of a warmth to the screen, to the cinematography that was very tangible and felt very real.
Yeah, and I think he also did a great job of making the environment look lived in, where everything had dirt on it. It wasn't seeing the.
Well, that was the way the first trilogy was. Everything was dirty and nasty and kind of run down, and then when you get to the prequels, it was almost like, I guess Lucas was like, well, this was before all that happened, and everything is squeaky clean.
Yeah, and it just didn't. It just felt really, literally fake. It felt fake. It didn't look. It just didn't take you out of it. And this felt more natural. Like this is a potential planet things could live on.
Right. Yeah, it was weathered.
And we mentioned BB-8 before. We have to mention him. That robot was adorable. How they choreographed his emotions and his beats was just fantastic. I loved it.
Yeah, I liked him too. He's very similar to R2-D2. He's like R2-D2 Deluxe. He's smaller than R2, but that he's more mobile.
Yeah, and it made it work. It's like a cat almost. How he purred and made noises and turned his top head part around is great pantomiming, and it really did give him character. Much more than you'd expect from a robot with just a ball,
Right, but I the technology isn't stagnant in the Star Wars universe, so it worked to me because it seems like, okay, that does look like possibly an R2 unit might look in 40 years, just like cars have updated and phones have updated.
Yeah, and I do, the convenience part still gets me because, like, okay, why did the Resistance or Republic, I'm kind of confused by those terms. What is which, and what happened in between the movies because it's such a huge void, that they weren't explained.
Right, you got a 30-year void there. And what else was I going to say? There was another plot hole that bothered me, and I hate to go back to this, but, when Finn reunites with Poe, it's like you don't know how Poe survived, and the thing that walks through my mind, is like, okay, Poe, did you, crash land the TIE fighter and just, it's like, Finn jumped out of the TIE fighter as soon as it crash landed and there was nobody there. I mean, it's possible that they, jettisoned on two different, areas, from when they escaped. But, I kept thinking there was no sign of anything. So I just, did you just like leave in there? It's like, hey, you helped me escape. You're my friend. Well, I've just crash landed here on the desert, so I'm going back to the base.
Yeah, he did give a throwaway line that he escaped right before. So it's just like, okay, that would have, it's fine that you're still alive, but it's just like, okay.
Right, and I guess they want to bring Poe back for the other film, but, I was just like, shook my head like, huh?
Yeah. I've read that originally, he was super excited to be in the movie, and then when he heard that he was, going to be killed off in 5 minutes, that he was like, oh, man, I really don't want to do this anymore. And I'm like, no, we really like you. We'll bring you back to life, because you would hate to be in a Star Wars movie and be in it for 5 minutes. Because, that's your, major career, highlight.
Right. He was a very strong character from the beginning.
And I do like him. I just they gave no screen time to him, so you barely got to know him. And of course, Chewbacca's back, and I thought he was fantastic. I wish that he was a little bit more sad after Han's death. I mean, you did tell that he's broken up, but like he should just be completely in a vegetated state. Being they've been together for probably at this point in time like 50 years or something. Yeah,
but I think that the Chewbacca character kind of straddles somewhere between animal and human, and so animals, like a little dog, if their owner dies, they'll be very upset, but they'll move on. And so I think that maybe Chewbacca did the same thing.
Well, overall, I really enjoyed everything about this, and it invigorated my interest more. When the end of episode 1, I was like, oh, that was just not that good. And episode 2, I kind of liked it, but I was in a really positive crowd, and like I rewatched it, and I was like, oh, that was bad too. And episode 3, I was like, okay, I like this. This works. I haven't seen it again since, but yeah, I could tell that this one actually made sense and worked for the story. And
I think the main thing that bothers me about all 3 of the prequels is just the dialogue is so wooden. I mean,
yeah.
From my point of view, the Jedi are evil. I mean, of all the things you could have said, it's like, how about, the Jedi are just as evil as I am, or just as evil as the Sith, or, from my point of view, I don't see a difference between the Sith and the Jedi.
Yeah.
And, just, I was just, every time I hear that line, I'm just like, oh my God, that could have been written so much better.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I hate to compare movies because it's not fair, but Star Wars is just such a big thing that you kind of have to, because it's such a big thing, universe, and all the movies are dependent on one another. So it's one of those things where you can't,
The main thing you've got to think about when you're making a Star Wars film is that people are going to be watching these movies for 30-plus years, so you've got to make it where it stands up for 30 years.
Yeah, and it's, this is great science fiction. It's fun. The whole family can enjoy it, and it works on every level. The plot holes are the really thing that just nags us, and that's the only real issue.
The kids will never notice that.
Yeah. It's just so convenient at times. You're like, why does that happen that way? Oh, of course they came in at this time. The X-Wing.
But we're watching this in our 30s.
So, but yeah, either here or there, that it's annoying. But those kind of things could have been cleaned up a little bit. It does have like a pretty nice runtime, and you get a lot of story in here. So, they couldn't really make it longer because it would have been like 3 hours, So.
Correct. It was as long as it needed to be. So, and I trust that Abram will tie up those loose ends. He's listening to people asking those questions too.
Yeah, and I really do hope that episode 8 is fresh and totally no new Death Star. No, I guess Luke is going to train, just like Yoda trained him. But, that could just be a minor part of the movie, and episode 8 could be totally own thing, where it's not at all referencing anything else. It just takes the ball and runs with it,
Perhaps. I think there will be elements of a little bit of both in the film.
Because,
otherwise, the people that watched it in their 20s that are now, pushing 60 are not going to be as drawn to the film. So I think that they'll still need to keep those actors in there.
Yeah,
until they meet their untimely ends as well.
Yeah, I expect Leia and Chewie to be in the movie in 8, but I'm just saying, just to make it more new. That's much more open to have.
Now, I think after this trilogy is over, then they will definitely be able to make totally new movies.
Okay, well, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
It's quite a crunch time between this film and the next. The next one comes out May of 2017. That's not far away.
Yeah, there's going to be Rogue One. I think it's like a side story of going to happen next year, and then they're going to try to do like a young Han Solo movie too. So they're going to have some standalone movies too. So it's gonna they're gonna have new Star Wars standalone movie, new Star Wars standalone movie. So they're gonna keep making these for a while. So
okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's gonna be it for this spoilerific review of Star Wars Episode 7. Force Awakens. We both really like it, and I hope you liked it too. Thanks again for listening. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
Her name was Leia. She was a princess with the Danish on each ear, and Darth Vader drawing near. So R2-D2 found Ben Kenobi.
Obi-Wan.
He'd have to put the Death Star plans into the rebellion's hands. So Luke and Obi-Wan had to get to Alderaan. So they stopped into Mos Eisley to have a drink with Han at the Star Wars Cantina. The weirdest creatures you've ever seen. Star Wars Cantina. Music and blasters and old Jedi masters at the Star Wars. His name was Solo.
Han Solo.
He was a pilot with a blaster at his side and a smile 12 parsecs wide there with Chewbacca. He was a Wookiee. They met with Luke and Obi-Wan about the Millennium Falcon docking Bay 94. Stormtroopers at the door with the flash of Ben's lightsaber. Now there's an arm on the floor at the Star Wars Cantina. The weirdest creatures you've ever seen. The Star Wars Cantina. Music and blasters and old Jedi masters at the Star Wars.
Mos Eisley Spaceport. You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. You must be cautious.
His name was Yoda. He was a Muppet. Darth Vader was so bad, and by the way, he's Luke's dad. Luke kissed his sister. His hand got cut off in that galaxy far, far away. Luke has had a lousy day. Boba Fett was so mean. Jabba had bad hygiene. Why didn't they all just relax back on Tatooine at the Star Wars Cantina? The weirdest creatures you've ever seen.
Okay, so that's going to conclude the podcast.
Remember to rate this podcast on iTunes and on Stitcher Radio.
Also remember to follow us at 3dortuny.com on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram.
Please comment on the website and subscribe to us on YouTube.
Finally, I hope you enjoyed the show and thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye.